Somewhere nestled away in rural Ontario, there's a town known for its belief in vampires. A report published in the 1970s claimed that residents of the town of Wilno, a Slavic ethnic group known as Kashubians, performed rituals on babies and children that are believed to be cursed, and that they've even, on a few occasions, dug up the graves of suspected vampires to cut their heads off, saving the town from torment. Since the 1970s, the claims from this report have been covered in countless news articles among the ranks of the National Enquirer, Psychology Today, the Ottawa Citizen, and the topic was even brought up for debate in the House of Commons. Every few years, another journalist sets out once again to unearth the story of the vampires of Wilno, Ontario. I grew up in a town next to Wilno, and I've been hearing these stories my entire life. After a certain amount of time, the words vampires and Wilno became synonymous. I decided to do something that many of the journalists before me didn't dare to do. Go to Wilno to hear this story firsthand from the people that live there.
This vampire story is absolutely crap. My grandfather, 104, I asked him, and he had never heard of it. My mom, all my neighbors, everybody in the community, they say it's all bullcrap.
I don't really believe in vampires. Like, if I thought that there was, I'd put garlic outside my door for sure. Kind of unbelievable. You know, that's just how I feel about it.
No, I don't want to even talk about vampires because it's all BS, what they say. I think it's something like just to scare people, just like we'd say to the kids, you know, there's a boogeyman.
Growing up there, it's never been talked about. There's really no evidence that any of this really happened.
I think the Wilno people were really upset that they're noted for vampires. They didn't like it at all.
What ends up happening is, I think over time, as more publications and more media sort of pick it up, they just keep sensationalizing it and they keep the story going.
Because it sells, but it's all false. And that's something that we don't want to be known about, really, because it's just not factual. But what is factual is that we are a Kashubian community and we're very proud of it. And that's our true identity.
I was shocked to hear that the vampire story seemed to be a fabrication, at least according to the residents of Wilno. Some called themselves Polish Kashubian, while others simply called themselves Kashubian, so I asked David about it.
Kashubia, that is a Slavic nation with their own culture, their own language, their own land, which is called Kashubia in Europe, and all the traditions from literature to history, music, dance. But the thing is that we were almost wiped out when it comes to our identity.
I didn't know a lot about Kashubian. At the time, we were just Polish. I knew that it was Canada's first Polish settlement as well.
In 1875, when the church was being built, they for some reason sent us a Polish priest, and they made us Polish. So this is all new. It's like a discovery, right?
They told me that the vampire rituals that journalists reported on weren't true and were fabricated to make the Kashubian or Polish Kashubian stories seem more interesting than the truth about their rediscovered identity.
Absolutely good feeling to know who you are. You know, living under a false identity, to me, it doesn't feel good now that I know. But at first, not knowing, you don't feel it. I never knew that I was a Kashub of Kashubian heritage until I was around 46 years of age. And even in our community, we never even heard of the word Kashubian.
It took just a couple of years ago that I found I was a Kash, not Polish.
Finally, we've got a word that we can put to our identity.
And from now on, from that time when they said I was a Kashub, I'm a Kashub now. I'm not Polish.
No, it was not a good feeling to find out that your identity was basically stolen, right? If you're looking at a vampire story, basically our identity was sucked right out of us.
And I think it's given me, all of us, a bit of an identity. I think it's something to be proud of.
I haven't got too much to say, but I'm a proud Kashub.
I have to admit I was disappointed when I saw that I wasn't going to get the vampire story that I came for. Most of the interview subjects I approached didn't even want to talk to me after I mentioned the word vampire, but now I can't blame them. They've been dealing with journalists in search of an easy story for decades now. But the problem with an easy story, as we've seen in the case of Wilno, is that the lines between truth and fiction become blurred, and the experience of a dwindling culture can be replaced by a make-believe vampire story.
I would definitely say that sometimes the journalists and media are the vampires, because they like to spread that falsehood because it makes great television, great media story. But it's not fair to the people of Wilno, because that is not our history. Thank you. You know what's interesting is that you're going to do a 50-minute documentary, and maybe even less than that, and our story is probably, a 10-hour story, right? But it's the way it goes, right?